Welcome to DomiNations. My name is Mark, and yet it's time for another update about the museum, due to the fact that we got access to new researches within our library. First, I would like to thank andreshidalgo for giving the suggestion to actually let me do the research and come up with the material to upload the video. Let me give first some brief introducing words. It's about lessons learned, due to the fact that the former video created some pretty heavy discussions about my perspectives, the perspective of other players playing, and the only thing I could derive sufficiently was that players' perspective is individually, so everyone perceives individually, and we have, for example, some players playing in the very early game, so actually their museum is not equipped very well. They are in search for valuable artifacts and don't have them yet, so they are more interested about getting new ones and therefore more focused for fragments. Other ones who are probably in the mid or in the late game have already very valuable artifacts and are only or mostly interested in leveling them up. So they are primarily focusing for blueprints instead of fragments, and therefore an equation about getting blueprints or fragments might be valued completely different by some or by two players even. As always, after uploading the video, I will put in the timestamps in the video timeline so that you can choose which aspect or subtopic of the video you can watch, and that you can see at the time lapse or at the times. So like always, I will put the timestamps down below in the timeline so that you can choose and have an overview about all topics and where they are to find. But to have some uniform knowledge, let's answer the basic question, which might be unknown to the most of you: why the museum actually is that much important. I mean, the museum was implemented pretty much lately, but nevertheless, it is one, in my opinion, of the very most important and affecting buildings inside the game, not only due to the fact that it makes each base and each characteristic of a player, either offensive or defensively, very unique and makes the most difference, because having all buildings leveled up makes all players equal, but upgrading the museum, possessing your own artifacts and leveling them makes completely unique percentages for defense, offense, for raiding, for specific troops, and makes a real difference between players. So the museum is a crucial aspect about success or failure in the game. So like all other aspects in the game, Nexon made sure that you either put a lot of time and effort in it, or even put a lot of money in it to get the success out of the museum. So you can pretty much pay or even put a lot of time and effort in it, and success in this case would mean possessing strong artifacts, which are preferably boosting your very unique troops, which with you are attacking, and having all of those valuable artifacts leveled highly. Thereby we have some very central resources to use. First, about our ground resources such as gold, food and oil, but those ones are not affected by the museum trick or the research I will look together with you later on. Therefore they are not part of the video. Also we have some specific resources such as the benefactors, supplies and the researchers, but those ones also have only little or nearly no effect, or are not affected by the research we are making this video about. Therefore it's part of another video, but at least we have our fragments as well as our blueprints. It's pretty slow. Our blueprints as well as our fragments, and on those resources we can have a quite huge impact by some research, and therefore they will be the central issue in this video. But first, let's derive a very general but nevertheless even more important question, which you should, I would say, always ask yourself: where actually am I what is my target and what actually denies me from getting there. So what are the struggles and problems I have to overcome to get to the target I want to. So for example, am I an early game player, not possessing a lot of valuable artifacts? So in this case, I would be interested to craft as many artifacts as possible to get a higher likelihood for getting even some or probably all valuable artifacts which I can use, which means that I'm really depending from fragments. I need a lot of fragments to produce a lot of artifacts and get some good ones. Am I a mid-stage or late gamer? I probably have most or even all of my artifacts, very, very good ones, which I don't prefer or I don't want to choose. And I only want to level them up, and for leveling up, I am depending on blueprints. So in this case, fragments are not irrelevant, but less relevant to me, and I really have the need for new blueprints. So pretty much ask yourself, to which of both categories am I belonging? So afterwards you will see what the answer to this question will bring you. Over here I have summed up all related research I could find so far in the library either or in the university. You can take a screenshot, otherwise I will later on, for the ongoing explanation of the tool, show you this column or this chart in the right top corner. So actually, let's answer the question, what actually is the museum trick, how it is working. I have prepared a pretty easy example over here for you of a tool I will show you later to make sure that everybody has a brief and uniform understanding of what we are talking about. Actually, the museum trick is nothing else than an accounting. So you are talking about which costs do I have and which gains do I get. Then you can compare both with another and see whether the accounting in the end will get positively or negatively. So you will see a trend, and if you have a negative trend, this will mean if you continue it for the future, you will run short of the depending resources and will be unable in the future or in the long term to continue it. If you have a positive trend or outcome, you will be able to prolong it theoretically for infinity of time. And therefore, we want to try to get the best fundamentals from our research to be able to continue this trend positively for the future. Let's see the tool over here. In the very left column, you have the costs. So either the costs for blueprints and the costs for fragments, about crafting as well as leveling up. So what are we paying to get an artifact? Then we have the gain column, about blueprints and fragments, so what we are getting back from an artifact if we are destructing it afterwards, and at least the accounting, which is in principle nothing else than comparing and adding up the costs against the gains and see whether we will get a benefit or a positive outcome or a negative outcome. Let's start with the 1-star artifact, and in case of the 1-star artifact, you can see that creating an artifact always means having to pay 95 fragments. This is inevitably, therefore we have costs of 95 fragments, and if we are leveling it up, one time we will pay 40 blueprints without research and 36 blueprints if we have done the complete research available, which I've showed you before and which you can see at the right top side. Now, if we have now upgraded the artifact once, it will be worth about 30 blueprints, or with complete blueprints, 39 blueprints. With complete research, 39 blueprints, sorry, and 50 fragments, and with complete research, 60 fragments. If we are now accounting it up, you can see that in the case without any research, the accounting would be negatively related. So we would make minus 10 blueprints and minus 45 fragments. In case of maximum or complete research, we would gain 3 blueprints and only make about 35 fragments. The same we can see for a 2-star artifact. And what I only wanted to make you sure or to make you clear is, if you're using the museum trick, doing the complete research, you will be able to have less negative or more positive impact on crafting, upgrading and destructing your artifacts, and probably if you use it wisely, you will be in some cases nearly theoretically without any end, so infinitively able to craft new artifacts and therefore have a high likelihood for getting good ones or producing blueprints to upgrade the artifacts you already have. So over here we have the complete tool. Don't be overwhelmed. I have created it in that much complexity or detail only for some of you, because I know some of you are very interested in the deep dive and details. Therefore now you have the opportunity to make some screenshots and probably evaluate or assess it for yourself personally. We have over here the complete tool for a 1-star artifact, in case of a 2-star artifact, as well as a 3-star artifact. Now, after having the time had to conduct a screenshot for yourself, let me reduce the complexity to make it more easy accessible without tremendous loss of information. Basically, this column over here is just, this tool over here is just completely equal to the tool I showed you before. It's only more in detail. So we can see over here basically that we have once the craft section, so about the costs in fragments and blueprints to craft an artifact, which are always minus 95 fragments, so it's universal and it's not being able currently to being changed by research. Therefore I grayed it out so that we don't take it into account. Same goes for leveling up in fragments, because leveling up always needs blueprints. Over here we have different costs. Then we have the destruct section. So what are we getting back by destructing the artifact? Either blueprints as well as fragments, and at least, again, the accounting. So adding up what costs we had and what gains we had, and see in sum whether it's positively or negatively related. Then also we have some sub-columns, which always means without research, complete research, without research, complete research, either for blueprints or either for fragments. I think it's easily understandable. At least we have some rows. I think it's called rows and columns. First is about just getting the artifact, not leveling it, immediately destructing it. Then we have getting the artifact, leveling it 1 time up, destructing it afterwards, 2-time upgrade, then destructing, 3-time upgrade, afterwards destructing. Let's make an example how to assess it, for example, for a 2-star artifact. Now, if we have a 2-star artifact and let's decide, I don't know, to upgrade it not and directly destruct it, it would mean we craft an artifact. And if we are smart, we are not crafting 1, because it will cost us ordinary 100 fragments. Now with the new research, once a day less, but that's not important because it's only once a day. So in general, we are smart. We don't want to craft only 1. We craft 5 because it's cost efficient and we get 95 fragments to pay. Then we get the artifact. Not upgrading means we don't have to pay any blueprints, and the artifact without research will be worth about 40 blueprints and 90 fragments. Now, if we would have done the complete research, instead of being worth 40 blueprints, it would be worth 52 blueprints, so 30% additional, and instead of 90 fragments, 108 fragments, so 20% additional. If we are now counting it up, we would get, by destructing the artifact, 40 blueprints without research, and with full research, 52 blueprints. Without research, we would make a minus of 5 fragments and a plus of 13 fragments if we would have conducted the research. Now, if we are seeing, the equation is quite differentiating or differing in case of leveling it 1 time before destruction and leveling it 2 times before destruction. So the most blueprints in this case, in a case of a 2-star artifact, we can get by not leveling it and destructing it, and the most fragments we can get if we are leveling it twice and afterwards destructing it. So over here, it's probably one of the best situations to see and understand why it could be interesting for you to level an artifact before destructing it or even not doing it. Like earlier in the video, I mentioned some players are in the early game and don't have a lot of good artifacts, so they are searching for good ones. They need to craft a lot to get a higher likelihood of getting a good artifact. This means they need a lot of fragments. They are more depending on fragments. They want more fragments. Getting more fragments is better. So for early game players, for example, it would make sense to level all 2-star artifacts twice and destructing them, getting less blueprints, more fragments. For late game players, which are not opting for fragments, they are more about blueprints and they could directly destruct it. So let's make some recommendations. In case of a 1-star artifact, we can see that if we have done our research, we can decide whether to get 18 blueprints and minus 65 fragments, so a lot minus in fragments, but quite a lot or quite a bit, plus in our blueprints, or only to get plus 3 blueprints and minus 35 fragments. In general, it's my personal decision. I would opt out for leveling it one time and then destructing it, making only slightly plus in blueprints but less minus in fragments, which means in my personal view that I can continue this trend for a longer time without running out of fragments. If you have so many fragments that you just don't need them and only opting out for blueprints, just go for upgrading it not and directly destructing it. In case of a 2-star artifact, we already have assessed it, so the most blueprints you will make if you upgrade it no time, just directly destruct it, but the amount of fragments is quite tiny over here. So by upgrading it once, you will get probably the most moderate, intermediate between variant, because only losing in comparison to the no time upgrade 10 blueprints, but gaining more than 50 fragments. If you are now completely going after the fragments, you should upgrade it twice, afterwards destructing it, making more than 120 fragments, but only 33 blueprints. I could recommend for you, for early gamers, which are searching for good artifacts, upgrading it twice. For late gamers, upgrading it only once, and for all of those of you who want to go moderate, just upgrading it only once, destructing it, making moderately much of fragments as well as blueprints. In case of a 3-star artifact, I think it's pretty obvious and easy. We are either making the most blueprints as well as fragments by upgrading it 3 times, so I don't think we have to discuss over here. So what should you do right now if you so far have not put any attention to the regarding research for the museum? First, you should go to the museum, or the library, and check out which of the researches I already mentioned you have already conducted. Really focus for getting all of the other researches done so that you have access to the bonuses, and then putting the central question for yourself, which I already mentioned in the beginning of the video. What are the resources you are opting or you are targeting on? The fragments, the blueprints, due to the fact that you are an early or late gamer, want new artifacts or level the ones you already have, and then hardly go for it and getting the most out of the tricks we already mentioned inside the video. At least I can only give you the recommendation to have your eyes opened for lucky or other museum events. We have currently running a museum event which is not about what I wanted to tell you, but sometimes there are events which are getting you a discount on crafting or destructing artifacts, making it even more attractive to craft a lot of them or even destruct them, because the accounting gets even more positive and you can create new resources by actively crafting and destructing artifacts, doing it probably forever during the event. At least thank you for watching. If you have any suggestions or issues, please put them down in the comment section. Also, I would really be happy about some comments, how the video was interesting or even informing for you, and whether I should change probably something to the structure. See you soon, your DomiNation tips.